The diamond on her finger was small, but the secret she was hiding was massive. Ilara stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by the city's elite, listening to her mother-in-law describe her as a charity case and a gold digger to a circle of laughing socialites. They thought Ilara was a struggling waitress who had trapped the wealthy Liam Sterling into marriage. They had no idea that the woman standing in the cheap polyester dress didn't just attend these parties. She usually funded them. Ilara was about to reveal the truth, but what she found in the Sterling family's private study moments later would shatter more than just their reputation. It would turn this wedding into a war. The engagement ring wasn't vintage. It was simply old. The gold band was thin, worn down by decades of use, and the diamond was a microscopic chip that barely caught the light. But when Liam Sterling had dropped to one knee in the middle of a rain-slicked park in Seattle, holding it out with shaking hands, Ilara Vance had felt like the richest woman in the world. "It was my grandmother's," Liam had said, his voice cracking. "It's not much, Ilara. I know things are tight, but I promise one day I'll buy you the rock you deserve." Ilara had smiled, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. She didn't care about the size of the diamond. She cared that Liam, a junior architect struggling to pay off his student loans, had given her his family heirloom. She also cared that he loved her. Not Ilara Vance, the sole heiress to the Vance global shipping empire. Not Ilara Vance, the woman whose trust fund could buy the entire city block they were standing on. He loved Ilara, the freelance graphic designer, the girl who clipped coupons for groceries and drove a dented Honda Civic. "It's perfect," she had whispered, and she meant it. Now, 3 weeks later, looking at herself in the mirror of the bathroom in their small shared apartment, Ilara adjusted the collar of her dress. It was a simple floral print she'd bought at a thrift store for $12. It was modest, slightly faded, and screamed working class. "Are you sure about this?" Liam asked, leaning against the doorframe. He looked handsome in his one good suit, though the cuffs were slightly frayed. He ran a hand through his sandy blonde hair, a nervous tic she had grown to love. "My mother, Catherine. She's intense. You don't have to wear that just to lower her expectations. You look beautiful in anything. But maybe the blue dress?" The blue dress was silk. It cost $800. It was hidden in the back of the closet, a relic of her real life. "No," Ilara said firmly, turning to face him. "Liam, you told me your family comes from old money, but lost a lot of it. You told me your mother is obsessed with status. If I walk in there looking like I spent a month's rent on a dress, she's going to think I'm financially irresponsible. I want her to see that I'm practical, that I can take care of you without draining a bank account." It was a half-truth. The real reason was a test. Ilara had spent her entire life being courted by men who saw dollar signs when they looked at her. She needed to know that the family she was marrying into would accept her with nothing. If the Sterlings could respect Ilara the pauper, they would deserve Ilara the billionaire. "Okay," Liam sighed, walking over and kissing her forehead. "Just prepare yourself. Beatrice will be there too." "Your sister?" "Yeah. She's a lot like Mom." The drive to the Sterling estate in Connecticut took 3 hours. As the landscape shifted from city sprawl to manicured hedges and iron gates, Ilara felt a familiar knot of tension. She knew this world. She had grown up in mansions twice the size of the ones they were passing. But today, she was an interloper. Liam's car, a rattling sedan with a broken AC, chugged up the long gravel driveway of Sterling Manor. It was an impressive house, a sprawling Georgian brick mansion with ivy crawling up the sides. But to Ilara's trained eye, she saw the cracks, The roof tiles needed replacing. The landscaping, while neat, was simple. No exotic flowers, just easy-to-maintain shrubs. This was a house, holding its breath, trying to keep up appearances. "Here we go," Liam muttered, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. They parked behind a line of luxury cars, Mercedes, generic BMWs, and a flashy red Porsche. "I thought this was just a family dinner," Elara asked. "It is," Liam said, wincing, "but Mum calls family dinner anything with less than 50 people. She invited some friends from the club. She wants to show off. Well, me." Elara squeezed his hand. "We've got this." They stepped out of the car. The humidity hit them instantly. Elara smoothed her thrift store dress, grabbed her worn canvas tote bag, and walked toward the massive oak doors. Before they could even knock, the door swung open. Standing there wasn't a butler, but a woman. She was in her late 50s, wearing a cream-colored Chanel suit that Elara recognized from the 2018 collection. Expensive, but dated. Her hair was a helmet of stiff, blonde lacquer. Her eyes, icy blue and sharp as diamonds, swept over Liam with a look of possessive pride before snapping to Elara. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Liam, darling!" Catherine Sterling cried out, ignoring Elara completely to embrace her son. "You're late. The Vanderbilts are already here." "Traffic was bad, Mum," Liam said, pulling back gently. "Mum, this is Elara, my fiancée." Catherine slowly turned her gaze back to Elara. She didn't look her in the eye. She looked at her shoes, scuffed flats, then her dress, polyester, then the tote bag, stained canvas. Her lip curled slightly, a micro-expression of disgust that vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a tight, fake smile. "Elara," Catherine said, the name tasting like vinegar in her mouth. "How quaint." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Sterling," Elara said, extending her hand. She used her boardroom handshake, firm, confident. Catherine stared at the hand for a second too long before giving it a limp, wet fish squeeze. "Please. The staff entrance is around the back for deliveries, but since you're with Liam, I suppose you can come in this way. Just try not to touch the wallpaper. It's imported silk." Elara froze. The insult was so casual, so practiced. Liam stiffened beside her. "Mum," Liam warned, his voice low. "What?" Catherine blinked innocently. "I'm just being practical, darling. Silk stains so easily." She turned on her heel, her heels clicking loudly on the marble foyer. "Come along. Everyone is dying to meet the girl who finally captured the Sterling heir. Though I must admit, Beatrice owes me $50. She bet you'd bring home that lovely girl from the law firm." Elara took a deep breath, her fingernails digging into her palms. "It's just a test," she told herself. Just a test. She had no idea that she had just walked into a shark tank wearing a suit made of chum. The interior of Sterling Manor was designed to intimidate. High ceilings, velvet drapes, and portraits of stern-looking ancestors lining the hallway. But again, Elara saw the details others missed. The velvet was dusty. There was a water stain on the ceiling disguised by a strategically placed chandelier. The Sterlings were cash poor. She was sure of it. They entered the drawing room, where about 20 people were mingling with cocktails. The air smelled of expensive cologne and desperation. "Everyone," Catherine announced, clapping her hands. The room went silent. "Liam has arrived, and he's brought Elara." The pause before her name was a masterful stroke of social sabotage. 20 pairs of eyes landed on Elara. She felt underdressed, exactly as she had planned, but the weight of their judgment was heavier than she anticipated. A young woman detached herself from a group near the fireplace and sauntered over. She was beautiful in a sharp, predatory way. wearing a red cocktail dress that fit like a second skin. This had to be Beatrice. "So this is her," Beatrice said, circling Ilara like a wolf inspecting a wounded deer. She held a martini glass in one hand. "Liam, you really have gone rustic." "Beatrice, stop," Liam said, his jaw tight. He put a protective arm around Ilara's waist. "Ilara is a graphic designer. She's incredibly talented." "Graphic designer?" Beatrice laughed, a harsh, tinkling sound. "Oh, you mean you make flyers for lost cats? How adorable." "I do freelance branding for startups," Ilara corrected calmly, keeping her voice even. "Helping small businesses find their identity." "Freelance?" Catherine chimed in, handing a glass of champagne to Liam, but pointedly ignoring Ilara. "That's a polite word for unemployed, isn't it?" The guests nearby chuckled softly. Ilara felt the heat rising in her cheeks. It wasn't shame, it was anger. She could buy this entire house and turn it into a parking lot if she wanted to. "I actually have a very steady client list," Ilara said. "I value the freedom of managing my own time." "Time is money," a man's voice boomed. A tall, heavy-set man with a red face walked over. He looked like he'd already had 4 drinks. "And it looks like you have plenty of time, young lady. I'm Richard, Liam's father." Richard Sterling didn't look malicious like his wife and daughter. He just looked tired and defeated. He offered Ilara a hand. "Welcome to the madhouse." "Thank you, Richard," Ilara said. At least one of them had manners. "Richard, don't bore her," Catherine snapped. "She probably doesn't understand business talk." "Liam, why don't you take Ilara to the buffet? I'm sure she's hungry. God knows the portions at wherever she comes from aren't this generous." Liam looked ready to explode. "Mum, can I speak to you? In private?" "Not now, darling. The Westcotts are here." Catherine's eyes lit up as she looked past Ilara. "Jessica, over here." Ilara turned to see a tall, blonde woman gliding across the room. She was wearing pearls, a pastel suit, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Liam!" Jessica squealed, ignoring Ilara entirely and planting a kiss on Liam's cheek, dangerously close to his mouth. "It's been ages. Your mother told me you were coming." "Hi, Jessica," Liam said stiffly, stepping back to stand closer to Ilara. "Ilara, this is Jessica Westcott. We grew up together." "Childhood sweethearts, practically," Catherine interjected loudly. "Jessica's father owns Westcott Banking. You know, the people who actually keep this country running." Jessica finally looked at Ilara. Her gaze was dismissive. "Oh, hello. Are you the friend?" "Fiancé," Ilara said, holding up her hand. The tiny diamond chip sparkled bravely under the chandelier. Jessica stared at the ring. Then she looked at Catherine, then back at the ring. A smirk tugged at the corner of her mouth. "Oh my, how quaint. It's so dainty. You must be terrified of losing it. It's almost invisible." "It's an heirloom," Ilara said, her voice icy. "It has value beyond money." "Of course it does," Beatrice sneered, appearing at Ilara's elbow. "That's what poor people say to make themselves feel better about scrap metal." Liam dropped Ilara's hand. "That's enough." His voice boomed, silencing the immediate circle. "Ilara is my future wife. You will treat her with respect." Catherine placed a hand on her chest, feigning shock. "Liam, there is no need to shout. We are just making conversation. You've become so sensitive since you moved to the city. It's the stress of providing for 2, I assume." She signaled to a waiter. "Garçon, get the young lady a drink. Something cheap. She probably doesn't have the palate for the Dom Perignon." Ilara took the glass of water the waiter offered. She needed to cool down. She needed to get out of this room before she said something that would reveal her identity. "Excuse me," Ilara said. "I need to use the restroom." "Down the hall, second door on the left," Richard mumbled into his drink. "Don't get lost." Ilara walked out of the drawing room, her head held high, listening to the murmurs erupt behind her. "Can you believe that dress? She looks like she creates drama for a living. Poor Liam. Trapped." Ilara reached the hallway and leaned against the cool wall, exhaling a shaky breath. She was shaking with rage. She pulled her phone out of her tote bag. She had one unread message from her personal assistant, Sarah. Subject: Sterling Financials. Body: "Ms. Vance, you asked me to run a background check on the Sterling family assets before the dinner. You need to see this. It's not just debt, it's fraud, and it involves the Vance subsidiary in Boston." Ilara frowned. She tapped the attachment. The Sterlings weren't just broke, they were criminals, and they were stealing from her. She was about to read the details when a voice came from the top of the stairs. "Lost, little girl?" Ilara looked up. It was Beatrice, looking down from the landing, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "Actually, yes," Ilara lied, slipping her phone back into her bag. "I was looking for the bathroom." "The guest bathroom is occupied," Beatrice lied back. "Use the one in the master bedroom upstairs. Or is climbing stairs too much exercise for someone used to whatever slothful life you lead?" Ilara stared at her. "Thank you, Beatrice." She started up the stairs. She wasn't going to the bathroom. She was going to find out exactly what the Sterlings were hiding. If they were stealing from Vance Global, the evidence would be in Richard Sterling's home office. Ilara Vance had entered the house as a victim. She was now hunting as a CEO. But as she reached the top of the stairs, she heard Catherine's voice drifting up from the foyer below. She was on the phone. "Yes, she's here. She's pathetic. It will be easy," Catherine hissed into the receiver. "Liam is clueless. Once we get him to sign the trust over to cover the wedding expenses, we can dump the girl. But we need to make sure she doesn't find out about the loan sharks or the insurance policy." Ilara froze on the landing. Insurance policy. This wasn't just about snobbery anymore. Ilara realized with a jolt of cold fear that she wasn't just fighting for her dignity. She was fighting for Liam's life. Ilara waited until Catherine's footsteps clicked away across the marble foyer below. The house was quiet upstairs, save for the muffled laughter drifting up from the drawing room. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, not from fear of being caught, but from the chilling implication of what she had just heard. Insurance policy. Loan sharks. She moved silently down the hallway. The carpet was thick, muffling her steps. She scanned the doors. Master bedroom, guest room, linen closet. At the end of the hall, heavy double oak doors stood slightly ajar. A faint light spilled out. Richard's study. Ilara slipped inside and closed the door softly behind her. The room smelled of stale cigar smoke, expensive scotch, and anxiety. The mahogany desk was a chaotic mess of papers, contrasting sharply with the pristine, curated appearance of the rest of the house. She moved to the desk, her eyes scanning the clutter. Unpaid bills, final notices, a threatening letter from a private equity firm in New York. The Sterlings weren't just struggling. They were drowning. "Come on, Richard," Ilara whispered to herself. "Where are you hiding the bodies?" She opened the top drawer. Empty liquor bottles. She opened the second drawer. A revolver. Ilara stared at the gun for a moment, a cold shiver racing down her spine. The desperation in this house was palpable. She pushed the drawer shut and turned her attention to a stack of file folders on the credenza behind the desk. One folder was marked, Vance Logistics, Invoices. Her breath hitched. This was it. She flipped it open. Inside were dozens of invoices for consulting fees, structural materials, and logistical support. The dates went back 6 months. The total amount embezzled was close to $3 million. Ilara's eyes narrowed. She recognized the authorization signature on the Vance Global side. It was a mid-level manager she had fired 2 weeks ago for incompetence. He must have been working with the Sterlings, approving fake invoices in exchange for a cut. But then she found the folder underneath it. It was a red folder, thin and ominous. The label read, LS Policy, number 4921. She opened it. It was a life insurance policy on Liam Sterling. Beneficiaries, Catherine Sterling and Richard Sterling. Date of activation, 10 days ago. Payout, $5 million. Clause, double indemnity for accidental death. Ilara felt sick. They weren't just stealing from her company. They were betting on their own son's death. The conversation she heard earlier. Once we get him to sign the trust. Loan sharks. Insurance policy. Clicked into a terrifying picture. They planned to take whatever remaining money Liam had in his trust fund, and then... What? Stage an accident? You greedy monsters, Ilara hissed. Suddenly the doorknob turned. Ilara didn't have time to think. She shoved the red folder into the waistband of her tights, smoothing her dress over it, and spun around just as the door creaked open. It wasn't Beatrice. It was Richard. He stumbled in, his face flushed redder than before, a fresh glass of whiskey in his hand. He blinked at her, his eyes glassy and unfocused. You, Richard grunted, swaying slightly. The pauper girl. What are you doing in my office? Ilara's mind raced. She adopted a look of wide-eyed innocence, clasping her hands together. Oh, Mr. Sterling, she squeaked, pitching her voice higher. I'm so sorry. Beatrice told me the bathroom was up here, but I got turned around. This house is just so... big. I've never seen so many books. Richard stared at her, his brain slowly processing the information. He looked at the desk, then back at her. The suspicion in his eyes warred with his intoxication. Bathrooms down the hall, he muttered, taking a heavy swig of his drink. Don't touch anything. This isn't a museum for tourists. Of course, sir. Sorry, sir. Ilara bobbed a clumsy curtsy. Something she knew would make her look uneducated and harmless, and scurried past him. Wait, Richard barked. Ilara froze in the doorway. Yes? Richard squinted at her, his gaze lingering on her face. You look familiar. Have I seen you? Not at the coffee shop. Somewhere else. Ilara held her breath. She had been on the cover of Forbes last month. If he recognized her, the game was over before she could save Liam. I work at Burgers and Shakes on 5th Street on weekends. Ilara lied effortlessly. Maybe you came in for a milkshake? Richard snorted, a cruel sound. I don't eat peasant food. Get out! Ilara fled into the hallway. She rushed into the bathroom, locked the door, and leaned against it, exhaling deeply. Her hands were shaking. She pulled out her phone and snapped a picture of the documents she had managed to swipe from the Vance Logistics folder before Richard entered. She texted Sarah, her PA, I have proof of the embezzlement. And Sarah, call my private security detail. Tell them to set up a perimeter around the Sterling estate. I want a team on standby in 20 minutes. Priority 1. Protect Liam Sterling. She flushed the toilet for effect, washed her hands, and looked at herself in the mirror. The girl in the glass looked terrified, but the eyes were cold steel. Showtime, Ilara whispered. The dining room was a masterpiece of intimidation. The table was a long slab of mahogany, set with enough silverware to perform a surgery. Crystal goblets shimmered under the dim mood lighting. Catherine sat at the head of the table, looking like a queen presiding over an execution. Richard sat opposite her, sullen and drinking quietly. Liam and Elara were seated on one side, while Beatrice and Jessica Westcott sat directly across from them. "So, Elara," Jessica began as the first course was served, a cold cucumber soup that looked suspiciously like slime. "Liam tells us you live in that artistic district. Downtown?" "It's a transitional neighborhood," Liam said quickly, placing his hand over Elara's. "It's got character." "It has rats," Beatrice corrected, picking up her spoon. "I saw it on the news. Someone was stabbed there last week over a pair of sneakers." "Rent is affordable," Elara said, staring at her soup, "and the neighbors look out for each other. It's a community." "How tribal," Catherine murmured. "Pass the salt, Beatrice." Elara picked up the wrong spoon, the dessert spoon. She did it on purpose. Beatrice nudged Jessica, and they both giggled. "Oh, honey," Catherine called out, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Not that one. The round one. We work from the outside in. Didn't your mother teach you table manners? Or were you too busy surviving?" Liam slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. "Mum, stop it," Liam said, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "Elara is my guest. She is the woman I love. If you can't be polite, we're leaving." "Leaving?" Catherine laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "And go where? Back to your hovel? With what gas money? You know, Elara, I think you should know something about your Prince Charming." Elara looked up. "What?" "Don't, Mom," Liam warned, his face pale. "He's broke," Catherine said, smiling cruelly. "I mean, really broke. We cut him off 6 months ago, when he decided to pursue architecture instead of joining the family hedge fund. That ring on your finger? He didn't inherit it." Elara frowned. "He said it was his grandmother's." "It was," Beatrice chimed in, leaning forward eagerly. "Mother sold it to a jeweler in 2010 to pay for a vacation to the Maldives. Liam found out, tracked it down, and emptied his entire 401k to buy it back at triple the price. Just to give it to you." The table went silent. Elara turned to Liam. He was looking down at his lap, ashamed. "Is that true?" she whispered. "I wanted you to have something real," Liam muttered, his voice thick with emotion. I wanted to prove I could provide something of value." Elara felt a crack in her heart. He had bankrupted himself to buy back a family memory for her. He wasn't trying to trick her. He was desperately trying to give her dignity. "It's pathetic," Jessica sneered. "Financial suicide for a piece of sentimental trash." Elara slowly reached out and took Liam's hand. She squeezed it hard. "It's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me," Elara said, her voice clear and strong. She looked directly at Catherine. "It shows he has something none of you possess. Integrity." Catherine's eyes flashed. The air in the room grew heavy. "Integrity doesn't pay the bills, darling," Catherine spat. "And speaking of bills, we have a proposition." Richard looked up from his drink. "Catherine, maybe not now." "Now is the perfect time," Catherine insisted. She snapped her fingers. Beatrice pulled a document out from under her placemat and slid it across the table toward Liam. "What is this?" Liam asked. "It's a waiver," Catherine explained breezily. "Renouncing your claim to the Sterling Family Trust. In exchange, we are willing to give you a cash settlement of $10,000, enough to pay off your little debts and maybe buy this girl some new clothes." Elara read the document upside down. It wasn't just a waiver. It was a transfer of power of attorney. If Liam signed this, they would have control over his legal and medical decisions. It was the final piece of the puzzle. They needed him to sign over control so they could execute the insurance scam without him interfering. "I'm not signing this," Liam said, pushing the paper back. "I don't want your money. I just want you to respect us." "Respect is earned, Liam," Catherine shouted, losing her composure for the first time. "And you have earned nothing. You bring this stray dog into our home. You embarrass us with your poverty, and you refuse to do your duty to this family." She turned her glare on Ilara. "And you," Catherine hissed, "do you think you've won the lottery? Do you think he's going to save you? He's a sinking ship. If you had any brain in that pretty little head, you'd take the 10 grand we're offering you to leave him and run back to the trailer park." "Excuse me?" Ilara stood up. "Sit down," Richard grunted. "No," Ilara said. Her voice changed. The soft, high-pitched hesitancy was gone. In its place was the cold, authoritative tone of a CEO used to commanding boardrooms. "I don't think I will." Beatrice blinked. "Why are you talking like that?" Ilara reached into her cheap tote bag. She didn't pull out a coupon. She pulled out her phone and placed it on the table. "You mentioned integrity, Catherine," Ilara said, looking the older woman dead in the eye. "And you mentioned bills. Let's talk about the bills you've been sending to Vance Global Logistics." The colour drained from Richard's face instantly. The glass of whiskey slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. What did you say?" Richard stammered. "Vance Global," Ilara repeated, enunciating every syllable. "You've been billing them for $3 million in non-existent construction materials, fraud, wire fraud to be exact, federal crimes." How would you know that?" Beatrice asked, her voice trembling. "You're a graphic designer." "I am a designer," Ilara said, picking up her wine glass. She swirled the red liquid calmly. "I design the future of my company. My name isn't just Ilara, it's Ilara Vance." Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Jessica Westcott dropped her fork. It clattered loudly against the china. "Vance? As in, the shipping empire, Vance?" "The sole heiress and current CEO," Ilara confirmed. She looked at Liam. He was staring at her with his mouth slightly open, confusion and shock written all over his face. "Ilara," he whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, Liam," she said softly to him. "I needed to know you loved me for me. And you proved that tonight." She turned back to Catherine, whose face had gone from pale to a blotchy, furious purple. You lied," Catherine shrieked, standing up and pointing a shaking finger. "You came into my house under false pretenses. You're a fraud." "I'm the fraud?" Ilara laughed, a dry, humourless sound. "Catherine, I'm not the one who took out a $5 million life insurance policy on my own son last week." Liam froze. He looked at his mother. "What?" "She knows," Richard whispered, putting his head in his hands. "It's over, Catherine. She knows everything." "It's not over!" Catherine screamed. She looked frantic, her eyes darting around the room. "She's lying. She's trying to tear this family apart. Richard, get the gun. Get the gun from the office." "Mom!" Liam shouted, standing up to block Ilara. "Get the gun!" Catherine roared, grabbing a steak knife from the table. "She's not leaving here with those documents. No one is leaving." The veneer of high society had completely shattered. There was no more pretense of etiquette. There was only a desperate, bankrupt family cornered by their own greed. Ilara didn't flinch. She tapped her phone screen once. "I wouldn't do that, Catherine," Ilara said coolly, "because the headlights you see coming up the driveway aren't the police. Not yet." Through the tall dining room windows, beams of bright white light swept across the lawn as 3 black SUVs tore up the gravel driveway, screeching to a halt right outside the front door. "That," Ilara said, "is my private security team, and they don't care about your imported wallpaper." The heavy oak front doors of Stirling Manor didn't open. They exploded inward. The sound was like a thunderclap, shaking the crystal in the cabinets. Catherine flinched, the steak knife in her hand wavering, but her eyes remained fixed on Ilara with a manic, glazed intensity. "You don't just walk in here," Catherine muttered, her voice trembling between rage and hysteria. "We are the Stirlings. We own this town." "You own nothing, Catherine," Ilara said calmly. She didn't move a muscle, even as the older woman brandished the blade. "Not even the chair you're standing next to." 3 men in tactical suits swept into the dining room. They moved with the fluid, silent precision of professionals who were used to handling threats much more dangerous than a disgruntled socialite with cutlery. Leading them was a man Ilara knew well, Marcus, the head of Vance Global Security. He was 6'4", built like a tank, and currently looked very unhappy to see his boss cornered. "Miss Vance!" Marcus barked, his weapon drawn but pointed low. "Status?" "Secure, Marcus," Ilara said, her eyes never leaving Catherine. "But Mrs. Stirling seems to be having a breakdown. I'd advise you to disarm her before she hurts herself." "Step away from the table," Marcus commanded, his voice filling the room. "Drop the knife, now!" Beatrice screamed and dove under the table, dragging the tablecloth with her. Jessica Westcott, pale as a sheet, was backing away toward the kitchen door, her hands raised in surrender. "I have nothing to do with this," Jessica squealed. "I just came for dinner. I didn't know they were criminals." "Shut up, Jessica," Catherine shrieked. She lunged, not at Ilara, but at Liam. It was a desperate, nonsensical move born of pure panic. She grabbed Liam's arm, pulling him in front of her like a human shield, the knife pressing dangerously close to his ribs. "Get back!" Catherine screamed at the security team. "He's my son. I can do what I want with him. He's mine." "Mum, stop!" Liam yelled, struggling against her grip. He wasn't fighting back hard, likely afraid of hurting her. Or perhaps he was just in shock that the woman who gave birth to him was now holding him hostage. "Put the knife down. You're insane. I did this for us." Catherine sobbed, her makeup running down her face in grotesque streaks. "For the family name. Do you have any idea how much it costs to keep this house, to keep up appearances? Your father is useless. He drank away the fortune 10 years ago. I had to fix it." Richard Stirling remained in his chair, head in his hands, weeping silently. He looked like a man whose soul had vacated the premises long ago. "By killing me?" Liam's voice broke. The realization hit him fully for the first time. "You took out a policy on my life. You were going to kill me to pay for—" "What? The country club fees? A new roof?" "It was just an accident," Catherine rambled, her eyes darting wildly. "We were going to make it look like an accident, a car crash, quick, painless. You wouldn't have known, and we could have lived, Liam. We could have been Stirlings again." The room went dead silent. Even the security team paused, horrified by the confession. Lara felt a surge of cold fury, unlike anything she had ever experienced. They weren't just greedy, they were monsters. "Marcus," Ilara said, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper, "end this." Marcus didn't hesitate. He holstered his weapon and moved with blinding speed. He sidestepped the table, grabbed Catherine's wrist, and twisted. There was a sickening crunch. Catherine screamed as the knife clattered to the floor. Marcus spun her around, pinning her arm behind her back and slamming her face first onto the mahogany table, right into the plate of cold cucumber soup. "Catherine Stirling, you are detained," Marcus stated flatly. Liam stumbled back, clutching his arm where her fingernails had dug in. He looked at his mother. pinned down, screaming obscenities, covered in soup, and then he looked at Ilara. Ilara stepped forward, ignoring the chaos, and reached for him. "Liam, are you okay?" He looked at her, his eyes wide and hollow. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Really?" "I'm the woman who loves you," Ilara said firmly. "And I'm the woman who just saved your life." "Boss," Marcus interrupted, holding Catherine down as she thrashed. "Local law enforcement is 2 minutes out. We have the perimeter secured, but Mr. Sterling over there is trying to eat paper." Ilara whipped around. Richard Sterling was frantically shoving the waiver document, the one transferring power of attorney, into his mouth, trying to chew and swallow the evidence. "Oh, for God's sake," Ilara sighed. She walked over to Richard, grabbed the pitcher of ice water from the table, and dumped it over his head. Richard spluttered, spitting out the soggy pulp of paper. He looked up at her, shivering, wet and pathetic. "It won't matter, Richard," Ilara said, looking down at him with pure disdain. "I have digital copies of everything. The invoices, the emails, the insurance policy. My team hacked your cloud server 10 minutes ago. We have the chat logs between you and the fixer you hired to tamper with Liam's brakes." Liam let out a strangled sound. "My brakes? The car I drove here?" "We need to check your vehicle, sir," one of the security guards said to Liam. "Don't go near it." Liam sank into a chair, his legs giving out. He looked sick. Beatrice crawled out from under the table. She stood up, smoothing her dress, trying to regain some semblance of dignity. "Well," Beatrice said, her voice shaking but chin held high, "this is all very dramatic. But surely, Ilara, or Miss Vance, you realize I had nothing to do with this? I'm just the daughter. I don't handle the finances." Ilara turned her gaze to Beatrice. "Is that right?" "Absolutely," Beatrice scoffed. "I'm a victim here too. My parents are clearly unstable." Ilara pulled her phone out again. She tapped the screen and held it up. It was a photo of a document. "This is the witness signature on the life insurance policy," Ilara said. "It's dated 10 days ago. That's your signature, isn't it, Beatrice?" Beatrice froze. Her mouth opened and closed like a goldfish. "And here," Ilara swiped to the next image. "A text message from you to your mother yesterday. Make sure he signs the waiver before dinner. If he doesn't, we can't cash out until the funeral." Beatrice's face crumbled. The arrogance evaporated, replaced by the terrified realization that she was going to prison. I needed the money," Beatrice whimpered. "My boutique is failing. I have debts." "You were going to murder your brother for a clothing store?" Ilara asked, her voice incredulous. Sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder by the second. Blue and red lights flashed against the dining room windows, mixing with the harsh white of the security floodlights. "Take them outside," Ilara ordered Marcus. "The police can handle the trash. I want to talk to Liam." The arrest was a spectacle. The neighbors, drawn by the commotion and the lights, had gathered at the end of the driveway. They watched in hushed fascination as the Sterling family, pillars of the community, members of the finest clubs, were marched out of their ancestral home in handcuffs. Catherine was still screaming about her rights and her imported silk. Richard was weeping, stumbling as the officers guided him into the back of a squad car. Beatrice was silent, staring at the ground, her mascara running down her face. Jessica Westcott was currently giving a statement to a detective, frantically trying to distance herself from the family she had been so eager to marry into just an hour ago. Inside the house, the silence was deafening. Ilara stood in the foyer, looking at the grand staircase. The house felt different now. It didn't feel imposing. It felt hollow. A rotten shell. She found Liam in the drawing room. He was sitting on a velvet sofa, staring into the cold fireplace. He held a glass of whiskey in his hand, but he hadn't taken a sip. Ilara walked in softly. She had left her poor girl tote bag in the dining room. She stood before him, still in her $12 thrift store dress, but the dynamic had shifted irrevocably. "Liam," she said softly. He didn't look up. "My brakes," he murmured. "That's why the pedal felt soft on the way here. I thought it was just the fluid. I was going to fix it this weekend." He looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. "If we had driven home, if you had been in the car with me." "But I'm here," Ilara said, sitting next to him, but leaving a respectful distance. "We're safe." "Safe?" Liam laughed bitterly. "I brought you into a snake pit. I defended them. I told you they were just intense. I dragged the woman I love into a house where my own mother was planning a hit on me." "You didn't know," Ilara said. "You did," Liam countered. His voice wasn't angry, just incredibly sad. "You knew before we walked in the door, or at least you suspected. That's why you wore the dress. That's why you acted so meek. It was a trap. You used me as bait." Ilara flinched. The accusation stung because it was partially true. "I didn't use you as bait, Liam. I used myself as a shield," Ilara corrected him gently. "I had my suspicions about the embezzlement at my company. When the trail led to your father, I had to be sure. I had to know if you were involved." Liam looked at her, hurt flashing across his face. "You thought I was stealing from you?" "I am a billionaire, Liam," Ilara said, her voice heavy with the burden of her reality. "People have been lying to me my entire life to get close to my money. I had to know if the man I wanted to marry was real. If I had come here as Ilara Vance, CEO, your parents would have been on their best behavior. They would have hidden the cracks. I needed them to think I was nobody so they would show me who they really were." "And they did," Liam whispered. "God, they really did. But you," Ilara reached out and took his hand. He didn't pull away, but his hand was limp. "You stood up for the waitress. You defended the girl with the thrift store dress. You bankrupt yourself for a ring to give me dignity. You passed the test, Liam, 1,000 times over." "I don't care about the test," Liam shouted suddenly, standing up and pacing the room. "I care that my life is a lie. My family is gone. My name is mud. I have nothing, Ilara, even less than before. I am the son of murderers and thieves." He stopped and looked at her. "And you're Ilara Vance. You own the skyline. We aren't just in different worlds, Ilara. We're in different galaxies." "Does it matter?" Ilara stood up to face him. "Of course it matters," Liam cried. "Look at this." He gestured to the room, the police lights flashing outside. "I can't be with you. I can't be the charity case husband of a billionaire. Everyone will think I'm just like them, just another sterling leeching off the Vance fortune." "Let them think what they want," Ilara said fiercely. "I don't care about them. I care about us." "I can't do it," Liam said, his voice dropping to a whisper. He pulled the engagement ring, the thin gold band with the tiny chip, off Ilara's finger. Ilara felt her heart stop. "Liam, don't." "This ring," Liam said, looking at it with disgust. "My mother bought a vacation with it. Beatrice mocked it. It's not an heirloom, it's just garbage. Like this family." He placed the ring on the mantelpiece. "I need to go," Liam said. "I can't be here. And I can't look at you right now without feeling like the biggest fool on the planet." "Liam, please." Ilara stepped forward, tears finally pricking her eyes. "Don't let them win. If you walk away, they destroy us. That's what they wanted." "They didn't destroy us, Ilara," Liam said, walking toward the door. He paused, his hand on the frame. The truth did. He walked out into the night, past the police cars, past the media vans that were just arriving. He didn't get into his car, which was now a crime scene. He just walked down the long, dark driveway toward the main road. Ilara stood alone in the drawing room of the Sterling estate. She had all the money in the world. She had the best lawyers, the best security, and the truth on her side. She had won the battle against the Sterlings. But as she looked at the tiny, dull diamond sitting on the mantelpiece, she realized she might have lost the only thing that actually mattered. The room was cold. The police were cataloguing evidence in the hallway. Ilara Vance, the Iron Lady of the business world, picked up the ring, curled her fingers around it, and for the first time in years, she let herself cry. But this wasn't the end. Ilara Vance didn't give up on investments she believed in, and she believed in Liam Sterling. She wiped her eyes, her expression hardening. "Sarah," she said into her phone, dialing her assistant as she walked out of the house. "Get the car and call my legal team. I want the best defense attorney money can buy." "For who, Mum? Yourself?" Sarah asked. "No," Ilara said, looking at the retreating figure of Liam in the distance. "For Liam. He's going to need help clearing his name." "And Sarah?" "Yes, Mom?" "Find out who holds the mortgage on this house. I want to buy it." "The Sterling estate, Mom." "Why?" Ilara stepped out into the cool night air, the wind whipping her cheap dress around her legs. "Because I'm going to burn it to the ground." The wheels of justice turned slowly, but for the Sterling family, they ground exceedingly fine. The scandal was the talk of the eastern seaboard for months. The Sterling downfall replaced the weather as the primary topic of conversation at country clubs and hair salons. The evidence Ilara had gathered was watertight. The forensic accounting team from Vance Global had unearthed a decade of fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement. But the charges that stuck the hardest were the ones born of blood. Catherine Sterling was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and insurance fraud. Her defense, that she was under duress, that she was mentally unstable, crumbled when the prosecution played the audio recordings from the dining room, where she lucidly detailed her plan to make Liam's death look like an accident. Richard turned state's witness against his wife in a pathetic attempt to reduce his sentence, but his involvement in the wire fraud was too deep. He received 15 years in federal prison. Beatrice, the girl who had mocked Ilara's poverty, traded her designer dresses for an orange jumpsuit. She was sentenced to 8 years for complicity in the fraud and aiding in the conspiracy. Liam didn't attend the sentencing. He couldn't bear to see them. He had already said his goodbyes to the concept of family. 6 months had passed since that night at the manor. Liam sat in a small, cramped coffee shop in downtown Seattle, the same city where he and Ilara had met, far away from the toxic ruins of Connecticut. He was sketching on a napkin. The lines were sharp, aggressive. He was designing a small residential unit, something efficient and affordable. He looked different. He was thinner, his face more angular, a permanent shadow of stubble on his jaw. The sterling air look was gone. He looked like a man who worked with his hands, and he did. He was working construction now, hauling drywall and mixing cement. No architecture firm would touch a Sterling, even one who was the victim. The name was poison. He hadn't spoken to Ilara in 5 months. She had tried. God, she had tried. She sent letters. She sent lawyers to handle his name change. He was Liam Vance now, taking his mother's maiden name. Not Catherine's, but his grandmother's. She had even paid off his student loans anonymously, though he suspected it was her. But he couldn't face her. Every time he thought of Ilara, he felt a crushing mix of love and shame. How could he be with her? She was a titan of industry. He was the biological debris of a criminal enterprise. Mind if I sit? Liam froze. He knew that voice. It haunted his dreams. He looked up. Ilara stood there. She wasn't wearing a thrift store dress this time, but she wasn't wearing a power suit either. She wore jeans, a white t-shirt, and a leather jacket. She looked normal, real. Ilara, he croaked. He cleared his throat. How did you find me? I'm Ilara Vance, she said with a sad smile, pulling out the metal chair opposite him. I can find anyone, but I didn't use a private investigator this time. I used your sketchbook. She pointed to the napkin. You always said you liked this coffee shop because the light hits the corner table perfectly at 10 a.m. I took a chance. Liam put his pen down. What do you want, Ilara? If it's about the money for the loans, I'll pay you back. It might take me 50 years, but I don't want the money, she interrupted softly. I want you to come with me. Just for today. There's something I need to show you. I can't, Liam said, looking away. I have a shift at noon. I bought the construction company, Ilara said matter-of-factly. I gave the whole crew the day off. With pay, you're free. Liam stared at her, a laugh bubbling up in his chest despite the pain. Of course you did. You just buy things. I invest in things, she corrected. Please, Liam, one trip. Then, if you want me to leave you alone forever, I will. I promise. They took a private jet back to the East Coast. The flight was quiet. They sat across from each other, sipping water, the silence heavy with unspoken words. Liam watched her read a report, marveling at how she could command an empire, yet still look at him with such gentle eyes. A car was waiting at the airfield. It drove them into the familiar, winding roads of Connecticut. Liam's stomach tightened as he recognized the route. Why are we going here? He asked, his voice tight. Ilara, I can't go back there. You need to, she said. You need to see it one last time. The car turned up the gravel driveway. But something was different. The manicured hedges were gone. The iron gates were removed. And the house. Stirling Manor, the sprawling Georgian brick mansion that had stood for 80 years, was a skeleton. The windows were gone. The roof was stripped. Massive yellow excavators and bulldozers sat on the lawn like dormant beasts. The front door, the one Catherine had marched him through, was just a hole in the brickwork. What is this? Liam whispered, stepping out of the car. The air smelled of dust and old wood. I bought the debt, Ilara said, standing beside him. The bank was going to auction it off to cover your parents' legal fees. I outbid everyone. I own it. All of it. The land, the bricks, the imported silk wallpaper. And? Liam asked, looking at the ruin. And I realized, Ilara said, that as long as this house stands, the ghost of what happened here will haunt you. It's a monument to greed, to lies. It's a place where status mattered more than life. She handed him a hard hat. I told you once I was going to burn it to the ground, she said. But that seemed wasteful. So we're doing something else. She gestured to a man in a vest walking toward them. It was the foreman. Ready when you are, Miss Vance, the foreman said. Ilara looked at Liam. I'm demolishing it, Liam. Every single brick. We're wiping Stirling Manor off the map. And what happens to the land? Liam asked. Ilara reached into her bag and pulled out a roll of blueprints. She unrolled them on the hood of the car. I saw your designs, she said. The ones you did in college. The affordable housing project for single-parent families. Sustainable, community-focused, beautiful. Liam looked at the blueprints. They were his drawings, his dream project. "This is 10 acres of prime real estate," Ilara said. "I'm donating the land to a non-profit trust, and I want to hire you as the lead architect to build a sanctuary here, a place where families are safe, where love matters more than money." Liam stared at the plans, his vision blurring with tears. She wasn't just destroying his past, she was giving him a future. She was giving him a way to redeem his name. "You'd trust me with this?" Liam asked, his voice shaking. "After everything?" "I never stopped trusting you," Ilara said. "You're the man who bought back a cheap ring because it meant something. You're the man who stood in front of a knife to protect a mother who wanted to kill him. You are the most honorable man I know." She reached into her pocket. And speaking of the ring, she held out her hand. Sitting in her palm was the thin gold band with the tiny diamond chip. "I fished this off the mantelpiece before I left that night," she said. "I've worn it on a chain around my neck every day since. It's the only piece of jewelry I care about, because it's the only one that was given with zero expectations of return." She looked at him, her eyes searching his. "I have billions of dollars, Liam. I can buy houses, I can buy companies, I can buy justice. But I can't buy this." She closed her fingers over the ring. "I can't buy the way I feel when you look at me. I pretend to be strong for the world. But with you, I just want to be Ilara." She held the ring out to him. "I'm asking you, Liam, not as a CEO, as a girl who loves you. Will you put this back on my finger? Will you help me build something real?" Liam looked at the ruin of his childhood home, the symbol of his pain. Then he looked at the blueprints, the symbol of his hope. And finally, he looked at Ilara, the reality of his love. He took the ring. His hands were rough from construction work, calloused and scarred. He took her soft, manicured hand in his. "I don't have anything to offer you, Ilara," Liam whispered. "Just me." "That's all I ever wanted," she replied. Liam slid the ring onto her finger. It didn't sparkle like the massive rocks the other socialites wore. It was dull and small. But as the sun broke through the clouds, hitting the gold band, it shone brighter than anything else on Earth. "Okay," Liam said, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. He looked at the foreman. "Let's bring it down." Ilara signaled the foreman. A massive cheer went up from the construction crew. The engines roared to life. The first wrecking ball swung through the air, smashing into the master bedroom window, the very room where Catherine had plotted her crimes. Bricks cascaded down. Dust rose into the air. As the walls of Sterling Manor crumbled, burying the secrets and the shame of the past, Liam wrapped his arms around Ilara. They stood together in the dust, watching the destruction. Not with sadness, but with relief. The old world was falling, but they were already building a new one.
Thanks for watching.